My name is Leela Grayson, and I am 24 years old. I live in the small, picturesque town of Pinewood Ridge. Growing up, I was often lost in the shadows of my older sister, Samantha, who dominated every aspect of our lives. Samantha was 3 years older than me. She was the type of person who thrived on chaos, and my life, unfortunately, provided her with an endless well of misery to draw from. Her toxic personality turned our home into a battlefield. While our friends and neighbors admired her, I suffered from her cruelty. I often wondered how someone so closely related to me could possess such hate. My childhood was riddled with memories of physical and verbal abuse. The anger she had for our absent father seemed to funnel directly toward me. I was her punching bag, her emotional outlet, and every time I thought I had reached my lowest point, she found a way to drag me down further. I would have gladly traded my life for a single moment of peace, but that peace was a distant dream, overshadowed by the darkness emitted from Samantha. She did not just take her frustrations out on me. She would hurt our family dog as well, ripping him away from me simply because she could not bear to see me smile, even for a fleeting second. All the love that should have been shared in a family household was replaced by fear and contempt. I remember the day our dog, Max, whimpered as she shoved him back into his corner after I had knelt down to give him a pat. Instead of feeling remorse, she laughed at my distress. I had tried standing up to her, but my words only fueled her rage. I quickly learned how to fight back, not with fists but through words. I could scratch her ego, and seeing her lose control was satisfying, but I wanted to do more. I wanted her to feel a fraction of the pain she had inflicted on me all those years. I wondered how a person could be so void of kindness. The turning point arrived when I discovered the perfect opportunity for revenge. One week, Samantha was particularly cruel. She had decided to unleash a torrent of rage on me each day after school, and I felt like I was drowning in her anger. I knew she had plans to attend a country concert that weekend with her friends. That whole week, I observed her, waiting for the perfect moment to strike back. On Monday, I watched her from the corner of my eye as she stormed down the hallway, and just as I had planned, I played the part of the victim, retreating to my room and pretending to cry. Each time she lashed out at me, she seemed to grow more powerful, and I saw my own opportunities pass me by. But that Friday, something deep within me snapped. When she tried to kick me down the stairwell, I felt a surge of defiance overpower my fear. I was desperate and resourceful, and all of my pent-up emotions led me to a gruesome plan. It started with a wasp trap I had stashed away in my room, the kind you buy to catch insects, but also highly toxic to humans if ingested. That week, I had strategically added a tablespoon of the wasp trap solution to her shampoo and conditioner. She would not know a thing until it was too late. I felt exhilarated figuring out my revenge plot. But as I plotted more, my mind drifted to an even darker idea. Beneath my bed, I had a small bottle of urine. I had initially toyed with the idea of using it at the start of the week, but decided against it because it may have been too extreme. However, after her threats to stab me, I realized nothing was off the table anymore. The anger coursing through my veins felt electric, and I decided to ramp up my revenge. I left the bottle in the sun, making it as rancid as possible. My plan took shape as the clock ticked down to her highly anticipated concert night. I could hardly contain my excitement. Samantha rushed through her shower, desperately trying to get ready. In her haste, and with my careful planning, I knew I had caught her off guard. I masked the smell with any cheap perfume I could find, keeping my poker face on as she departed that evening without a hint of awareness of what lay ahead. When Samantha returned home that night, the grin on my face could not have been wider, nor the thrill more intoxicating. The sheer joy of watching her suffer was like a drug. She stumbled into the house disheveled and upset, her body covered in the remnants of her own disastrous choices. She had been stung by wasps during the concert, complaining that there had been swarms attacking her, while her friends speculated on why she smelled so awful throughout the night. The harmony of their laughter felt like sweet, sweet music to my ears. The sigh of relief that escaped my lips after hearing her confide in my mother was almost euphoric. I had not just imagined it, this was real. Samantha was emotionally shattered. For 2 whole weeks, she couldn't muster the energy to lash out or even open her mouth to insult me. The power dynamic had shifted, and for once, I felt liberated from her grip. I finally understood what it meant to breathe freely. I could hardly believe I had succeeded without a glitch in my plan. However, as I reveled in my victory, I felt the pangs of guilt gnawing at the edges of my satisfaction. I had only acted upon feelings of revenge once in my life, and while it brought me great joy, I could not shake off the burden of the actions I had pursued. In the days following, I made it a point to avoid her at all costs, spending my free time with friends who adored me, but that whispering guilt often crept back in. Despite the feeling of victory, something did not feel right. My sister remained quiet and defeated, but every now and then, I could see glimpses of her usual self peeking through the cracks. I knew it would not be long before she plotted her own way to reclaim her power, and when that day arrived, I had to be ready. Curiosity and anxiety merged into one as I waited for the storm to hit. I did not want to find myself back on the receiving end of her maliciousness, so I had to figure out a way to fortify myself against her inevitable retaliation. I began devising a new plan, one that focused less on direct confrontation and more on carefully manipulating my surroundings, a more subtle form of revenge. As the days stretched into weeks, I felt trapped in a vicious cycle of revenge, anger, and fear. Just when I thought I had her cornered, Samantha pulled her knife from her sleeve. My moment of triumph began to slip away, hidden behind layers of her complicated emotions. It was as though she had hibernated through her fury, waiting for me to drop my guard. Nevertheless, I was determined to prepare for what she might unleash. I noticed how her interaction with our parents changed. They either did not see the bruises of her psychosis or refused to believe they existed. Samantha held me in contempt and carried herself like a queen. I felt trapped in an intricate game where I was a pawn and she was the master. Time went by, and while my confidence had blossomed, the lurking commitment to revenge continued, casting a shadow over everything I did. One evening, I had come home from hanging out with friends, having a good time, only to find her sitting on the couch, a smirk on her face. I wanted to ignore her, brush past her, yet something about that look snapped open the lock of venom I thought I had contained. The desire to best her surged within me, but the years of anticipating retaliation made me cautious. I had already tormented her once. Surely she was planning her comeback. Weeks passed, and our house felt like an arena filled with lions waiting to pounce. I could not let my guard down. This war would not end without a clear victor, and I was prepared to come out on top for a change. Then, one day, it happened. I overheard her speaking to one of her friends about a humiliating incident she planned to create, directed at me. That night, memories of her past cruelty flashed vividly in my mind. With adrenaline pumping through my veins, I devised my final act of revenge, drawing upon every ounce of creativity I had honed over the years. The plan would require sharp wits and a parade of borrowed ideas from everything I had seen on the internet regarding revenge. I would weave together various schemes to build the ultimate retaliation. I knew she cared deeply about her reputation and often struggled to maintain control over her friends. I would spread a false story about her. I spent several days laying the groundwork by casually mentioning inconsequential details to her friends, planting tiny seeds of rumors that would eventually grow into a full-blown spectacle. As I watched the narrative expand, I felt an unfamiliar thrill pulsing through my body, riding the roller coaster of revenge once again. The day came when Samantha was hosting a gathering at our house, inviting her friends over. Everyone thought they were attending a fun night filled with laughter, but I had other plans. I prepared a playlist of embarrassing songs that would play at key moments during the night while subtly feeding the narrative with selected hints. As the evening rolled on, I watched in delight as the layers of her carefully curated image began to peel back in front of them. They did not see the words I had carefully planted spreading like wildfire until they were inescapable. I could feel the tension in the air as everyone awaited her reaction. With the courage I had gathered, I watched her triumph crumble under the weight of her own pride. In that moment, I learned that revenge does not always solve our problems, nor does it provide a clean closure. Instead, it opened a trapdoor into an endless abyss of deeper conflicts. My efforts to bring her down were successful, but I realized that the cycle of retaliation would continue unless one of us broke free from the bind. Standing there, I almost felt pity for her. Samantha had been so lonely and trapped in her own mind, and by revealing her facade, I uncovered the fragility behind her character. I began to empathize with the pain she had endured, mirrored in her behaviors. In my pursuit of revenge, I had created a new normal for both of us, one fueled by light but hidden under layers of darkness. Though I had succeeded, a transformation sparked in my heart. Seeing my sister's humiliation allowed me to forgive her for all the hardships I had endured at her hands. After the concert disaster, the two of us gradually moved away from the adversarial paradigm, realizing the folly in our years of hatred. With time, the subtle gestures of kinship began to flourish amid our strained relationship. Where revenge felt like a victory, forgiveness felt like liberation. We slowly learned to share the space that had so long been dedicated to hostility. In the end, we found a surprising bond between us, built not on sisterhood alone, but on shared understandings of our own struggles. If I had to travel back in time, I would still commit that act of revenge, but for different reasons now. I thought it was solely an act of retaliation. In reality, it became the catalyst that sparked change in us both. Instead of letting hate consume us, we learned the importance of moving toward a future where anger no longer held sway. I emerged with a greater sense of self and understanding, while discovering that our lives were not so different after all. While revenge had been a thrilling endeavor, the journey toward healing now feels endless, yet full of hope. Pinewood Ridge still serves as a backdrop for our story, but it is now a place of reconciliation and sisterhood that carries the weight of our past while inviting us to shape our future. Be careful what you wish for, because revenge may just introduce you to a path you were never prepared to travel.